My husband told his family I'd forced him into an open marriage. They sat me down at his mother's house for what I thought was my birthday lunch, so I asked her what date he'd told her, and it was 4 months before he ever said it to me. On my 38th birthday, my husband's family sat me down in his mother's front room and told me, very kindly, that they knew what I'd been putting him through. I'd gone there for a lunch. There was a cake in the kitchen. I saw it on the way in. Let me back all the way up, because the shape of this matters more than the shock of it. I'm 38. Adam is 40. We've been married 11 years, and we've got two, Ada, who's 9, and Isaac, who's 6. In February last year, Adam told me he wanted to open our marriage. I said no. I said no for 8 months. That's not me rounding up. February to October, in about a dozen separate conversations, some of them calm, 2 of them not. The worst one was in a car park in the June, when I said I didn't understand why the man I married suddenly needed something he'd never mentioned in 9 years, and he told me that was exactly the problem, that I thought a person was finished at 30. He was patient about it in a way that I found completely disarming. He never sulked. He'd bring it up gently every few weeks and then let it go the second I got upset. He told me repeatedly that it was a conversation, not a demand, and that if the answer stayed no, then the answer stayed no, and he'd never mention it again. In October, I said yes. I want to be straight about why, because I've had a lot of time to think about it, and I'm not going to pretend I was purely a victim of a clever man. Partly, I was worn down. Partly, I'd started to believe I was the uptight one, the one who couldn't handle a grown-up conversation about how people actually live. And partly, if I'm honest, some small, ugly part of me wanted him to try it, hate it, and come back. We wrote rules. Nothing at our house, nobody we know, nothing overnight, and the kids never find out anything. He used it. Within about 6 weeks, he was seeing someone. I didn't. Not once. I made an account, sat looking at it for 2 evenings, and deleted it. It turned out I hadn't wanted an open marriage. I'd wanted my husband to stop asking me for one. The rules went the way rules go. Nothing overnight lasted until about the March, when he came home at 6:10 in the morning and told me he'd fallen asleep. And I said fine, because what was I going to do? Hold a tribunal about it in front of the cereal? I let a lot go that year. I've thought about that since. Every time I let something go, he'd be lovely for about a fortnight afterwards, and I'd think, right, we're through the worst of it. And here's the thing I need you to understand before we get to the front room. For that whole stretch, I thought we were basically all right. Not happy. All right. I thought we were 2 people muddling through something difficult that I'd agreed to. Now, his family. Adam's mother is Coral. His sister is Fen, who's 43, married to Doug. There's an aunt, Sylvie, who is at absolutely everything. I'd got on with all of them for 11 years. Coral rang me every Sunday. Not Adam, me. She taught me to drive properly after I passed my test badly. When I had Isaac, she stayed for 3 weeks and did every night feed she was allowed to. Around Easter this year, that stopped. The Sunday calls went first. Then Fen canceled a weekend we'd been planning for months, and then didn't rebook it, and then didn't reply to 2 texts about rebooking it. At a christening in June, Sylvie looked at me across a table and said, "You must be very sure of yourself, love." I didn't know what to do with that. I laughed and said something stupid. I asked Adam about it, more than once. He said his mom was getting older and going a bit funny about things. He said Fen and Doug were having a hard year. He said I was reading into it, and I had a theory of my own, which is the part I feel most stupid about now. I assumed they'd found out about the arrangement. I assumed Adam had told them, or someone had worked it out, and that they disapproved, and that they'd landed on it being my fault, because it's always the wife's fault in families like that. So I did what I always do, which is try harder. I sent birthday cards early. I offered to have Coral for Christmas before she could make other plans. I took the kids over to hers on a Wednesday afternoon in July with flowers I'd picked up on the way, and she was polite to me on her own doorstep for 40 minutes and never once said come in. Isaac asked me in the car afterwards why we didn't go inside. I told him Nanny was busy. By September, I'd more or less accepted I'd lost them. Then Coral rang and invited us all for lunch on my birthday, and I nearly cried because I thought it was a door opening. We got there at 1. Adam drove. The kids ran straight out into the garden with Doug, which I now know was arranged in advance. I went into the front room, and Coral was in her chair, and Fen was on the sofa, and Sylvie was standing by the window, and there was nothing on the table. And Coral said, "Sit down, love. We need to talk to you properly. I genuinely thought someone was ill." Then she said, "We know what you've asked him to do." I said, "What?" And Fen said, "The arrangement, the open thing. We know, and we've known for a while, and we haven't said anything because Adam asked us not to." I remember looking at Adam, who was standing in the doorway with his hands in his pockets and had not sat down. Coral said she wasn't judging me. She said people go through things. She said she'd had a difficult stretch herself in the 80s, which is a sentence I have still not fully unpacked. But she said she couldn't sit and watch her son do something that was killing him just to keep his family together, and that if I wanted to leave, I should leave and stop putting him through it. Then Sylvie, from the window, said, "He's lost 2 stone." He hadn't. He'd joined a gym in January, and he'd been very pleased about it. Now, here's what happened in me. And it wasn't rage. It was something much colder and much more useful. And I'm grateful for it, because rage would have got me nowhere in that room. Because Fen had said for a while. So I said, very evenly, "Fen, when did he tell you?" She said around Easter this year. And I said, "Coral, when did he tell you?" And she answered without a second's hesitation, because she had absolutely no reason not to. She said, "The October before last. He came round on a Sunday after his dad's anniversary, and he was in bits. October. He raised it with me in February." She'd been told the previous October. 4 months before he ever said the word to me, he'd sat in that front room and told his mother I was demanding it. I said it out loud. I said, "He asked me for the first time in February. That's 4 months after he told you I'd asked him for it." Nobody said anything. So I kept going, because once you start pulling, you may as well pull. I asked Fen what exactly she'd been told at Easter, and Fen, who is not a liar and who went a horrible color, said that Adam had told her I'd had an affair the year before, that I'd confessed it to him, and that I'd said the only way I'd stay in the marriage was if it was open from then on. I have never had an affair. I have never used that arrangement, not once, not with anyone. I said so, and I heard exactly how it sounds, because everybody in the world says that. Then Coral said, "Well, that's not what he told me." And that's the sentence that turned it, because she wasn't defending him with it. She was working something out. She'd been told I'd asked for it out of nowhere, that I'd been going on about monogamy not being natural, and that I'd said I'd take the children if he didn't agree. Fen had been told I was a cheat who'd blackmailed him afterwards. Sylvie, it came out, had been told the 2 of us had both wanted it, and that I was the one who'd got carried away. 3 women in one room. 3 different versions, all of them starring me. He'd tailored them. He'd worked out what each of them would find hardest to forgive and handed her that one. Sylvie sat down. She'd been at that window for 20 minutes, and she sat down on the arm of the sofa like her legs had gone. Coral turned round in her chair and said, "Adam." And he said, "This is exactly what she does." That was it. That was what he had. This is exactly what she does. So I asked him one question. I said, "Say the date. Say out loud the date you first spoke to me about it." He didn't say anything at all. He stood in that doorway with his hands in his pockets and looked at the carpet, and his mother sat and watched him do it, and that was the whole thing finished. I got my coat. Fen followed me into the hall saying my name, and I told her I wasn't doing this within 50 feet of my children, and I went out to the garden and told Ada and Isaac we were going for chips. Adam didn't come home that night. He stayed at his mother's, which I understand did not go well for him. Right where it's landed. We're divorcing. He moved out in October into a flat about 20 minutes away. The house is on the market. I put in considerably more at the start because my dad died the year before we bought it, and it's documented to the penny, so I'll get that back and we'll split what's left. The kids are half the week each. He's a decent father, and I've said that out loud to them and to other people because it's true, and because they're going to grow up hearing plenty of other things. He's asked to talk properly 3 times. The first 2 were about the house. The third one, he said he'd been drowning that year, and he'd told his mom something stupid because he needed one person on his side, and it had got away from him. I asked him which of the 3 stories was the one that got away from him. He didn't answer that either. Coral rang me 11 days after my birthday and cried on the phone for about 20 minutes. 5 months of not speaking to me, and she was apologizing for all of it, and I let her. And then I told her the thing I'd been working out how to say, which is that the apology was fine, and I'd take it, and the 5 months weren't coming back. She has the kids on Thursdays again. She and I are civil and mostly warm, and something has gone out of it that I don't think is coming back either. We both know that, and neither of us has said it. Fen hasn't apologized. Fen still believes some version of it. She told Doug she thinks there's more to it, which is what people say when they'd rather not have been wrong. And here's the cost, because there is one, and it isn't the marriage. For about 6 months, I thought I was losing my mind. His entire family went cold on me, and I could not work out why, so I decided it was my fault, and I tried harder. And I stood on a doorstep in July with flowers in my hand in front of a woman who thought I'd blackmailed her son. Ada asked me in the summer why Nanny doesn't like me anymore. I have genuinely blanked what I said to her. That's the bit I'd undo, and it's got nothing to do with him. Update about 4 months on. 2 things. The woman he'd been seeing contacted me in January. Her name's Lena, and I want to be clear that I don't hold one single thing against her. She'd worked out that married and open was doing a lot of heavy lifting in what he'd told her, which was that his wife had a boyfriend, that the marriage had been over for 2 years, and that he was staying in the house until his youngest started school. Isaac started school 2 years ago. She ended it the day she put that together. She said she felt sick about it, and she asked me twice whether I was all right, which was more than my sister-in-law managed in 5 months. I told her she was the 4th woman he'd handed a custom version of me to, and she really shouldn't take it personally. And she laughed in a way that made me think she'll be all right. The second thing is that he's telling people I made it public, that I stood up in his mother's front room and humiliated him in front of his family on my own birthday in a house where his aunt was in the room. And that one is very nearly true. I asked 3 questions in that room, and I had a fair idea where 2 of them were going. I'm not going to pretend otherwise, and I'm not sorry about it. He spent the best part of 2 years writing a version of me and posting it out to everyone who mattered to me, a different copy each. All I did was get the 3 of them in the same room and ask them to read theirs out loud.